Welcome to the FNO InsurTech Podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsurTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world, it's us, the FNO InsurTech guys, back with another intriguing, interesting, storytelling episode of FNO InsurTech, your top source for all things InsurTech. Today, we have an amazing episode.
We do. It is a news-filled, amazing episode.
We were reading the newspaper a few weeks ago.
That's not a thing anymore.
There is no newspapers. There are no newspapers. Reading the newspaper, and we saw a story come across the press about old friends of ours,
Two past guests,
Betterview, and that they had been acquired by Nearmap. Did you read that story, Lee?
I read that story. It was a great story, and I thought, wow, two past guests, two past companies who have been on the podcast are coming together, and they're going to change the world. That's exactly
right.
What I thought.
That's right. Patrick Quigley and team pulled the trigger on an acquisition, perfectly natural combination of companies, and added Betterview, a very, very interesting company. And so because of our enormous network in the InsurTech community, I think Lee and I counted, we know 9 people in the InsurTech community now. Is it 9? Are we up to 9?
9.5, something like that.
Well, we reached out to the only one that we really need to know, and that's Astrid.
That's true.
Because she knows everybody.
That's the one that everyone should know in the industry.
That's right. And if you don't know Astrid, that's okay. She knows you.
Yes.
And
she knows all about you.
We said, yo, Astrid, we need one of these guys to come tell us the story.
We got to hear it.
Bada bing, bada boom. David Lyman, CEO, co-founder, with the other Dave of Betterview, is on the podcast today.
Here today to talk about the big news, the big announcement that came out, I think, December 5th. And he's going to talk all about it. But first, he's going to talk about Betterview and the story and the critical pivot that happened, and then where we are today. So I'm excited to talk to him. He's a great guy to talk to.
If you like a happy ending and you like a story with a pivot in it, don't press pause on this podcast.
Don't go anywhere. This is your podcast.
Anywhere. This is the one you've been waiting for.
This is it.
So without further ado, these two yo-yos will go to the interview room with David Lyman, CEO and co-founder at Betterview. Hey, everybody. We are here with our guest, a special guest, a first-timer on our show, though the company is not the first time. And we have with us David Lyman, co-founder, CEO at Betterview, now part of the Nearmap family. Welcome to FNO InsurTech.
Welcome, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Happy to have you on.
We have been trying to get you on. In fact, we talked at ITC, and I was bothering you and bugging you about getting you on, and you graciously said yes to try to get me to leave. It worked. And I had no idea, of course, that an acquisition was about. I just wanted to have you guys on to talk about Betterview and what you do and what's going on and so on and so forth. You guys have really made a big splash over the last few years, but the bigger splash kind of just happened, right?
Yeah, it did. And I apologize for ghosting you after ITC a bit. I was had some stuff I couldn't talk about, but I reached out obviously right after we announced and said, hey, ready to chat. So now that the cat's out of the bag.
Well, congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
congratulations.
We're really excited to join the Nearmap family and I think, so Nearmap, we've been working with them for over 5 years now and know the company and their data incredibly well. And so, it just became really clear to us that the combination, the 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or 10 really existed in this case. There's just so many complementary capabilities and really in a shared mission at hand. So it really allows both companies kind of to keep doing more of what we were doing, but just have more, better resources. And quite frankly, it's a better experience overall for our customers by bringing these two things together. So we were excited about that.
Let's take a walk down memory lane first to kind of lead up to how you got to the big day, the big announcement over the last several weeks. And so tell us a little bit about you, and you're not an insurance guy by blood like the other David, right?
That's right. Yeah. So look, Dave and I knew each other before we started Betterview. You mentioned Dave is by blood, literally grew up in the business through a family inspection company that his dad had started before he was born. He worked in the business and eventually took it over and kept growing it. And eventually they sold in a private equity roll-up. So now today, Alpine Intel. But Dave really knew the inspections world inside and out and has had a love of technology. And I come from a technology background. I started my career, I first of all studied electrical engineering and then started my career at Accenture working for oil and gas clients on various technology initiatives, especially around SAP, custom apps for developing oil fields. And then one of my best friends growing up convinced me that we should quit our jobs. And he was an investment banker at JP Morgan. He's like, quitting my job and we're starting an internet startup. And I thought he was crazy, but I said,
what year was this? What year was this?
Back in like 2007, back then. So, but anyway, so, Mark and I started the startup and we ended up, integrating in the Facebook platform, got pulled out to California for what we thought was going to be a summer in 2009 and had some great, batch mates for companies like, mentioned became TaskRabbit and Lyft.
Wow.
So it's an interesting, company. It was such a fertile environment. We thought, we're not leaving. So we ended up staying but ultimately ended up getting acquired, worked for our acquirer. But, I got the itch again to start another company. And Dave and I got together in 2014. We were both exploring using drones to inspect property. So what I knew is that I understood technology and how to take lots of data, distill it down into insight and build software to make it actionable, because that was kind of the common thread of my last, my first two career experiences. But I didn't know anything about building inspections. So one of our mutual friends said, "Hey, you guys know each other, and you're both talking about drones and property inspections. Get together and figure this out." So we just decided, hey, well, let's test it out. And from Dave's experience, what he told me he was running into is he's inspecting all these commercial buildings. That was the primary focus, especially in the later years for his inspection business. And the problem was that the roof losses were just killing them. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I found some roof damage on my, roof of my house in Tahoe, and the roofer had just been up there 2 months earlier and totally missed it. So it's like, this could be it. Let's explore this problem." And we just said, let's see if we can get anyone to pay us for it and just do some roof inspections using drone. So we found that we got some traction there, and we kept building it up. We built some technology around it, but a few years went by, and we had raised some money and hired a team and built some interesting tech. But we found like we were not in a great business. We kind of said, "Hey,
it was a better idea than it was a business."
Yeah. Well, and it served the purpose. People loved the output, but they wouldn't buy a lot of it because it was too expensive and slow. And so said, "Okay, well, how can we come at this same problem? What were we trying to solve? Roof loss issues, another kind of virtualized property inspection." And that's actually when we went and kind of explored other ways that we could not send a drone pilot out, because autonomous flight was a dream for the future, still is. And so anyway, so what we ended up doing is just kind of scouring the landscape and reached out to the folks at Nearmap and said, "Hey, your imagery looks good. Can we license some of it?" And built and basically kind of took our existing customer base and started offering them up, "Hey, instead of using the drone, let's use this Nearmap imagery as the base for the inspection." We started seeing that really gain a lot of interest. And I'd say, within less than a year of releasing that, we had more revenue and committed contracts for sure around that product. And maybe another 6 months or so later, we just decided to drop the drone altogether.
And that was an underwriting product, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that and that goes back to, that was what Dave was selling into, is loss control, post spine inspections, that they were serving as the, out of house contractor along with many other firms. So we just basically were doing the same thing with drones, but quite frankly, also that's where we started the current, version of our product that's based off of pre-captured aerial imagery, specifically Nearmap, and then others over time.
And so let's just pause for a second and explain to us what it is that you do and produce, just quickly.
Yeah. So what we have is we built computer vision technology to take imagery and understand what's in the image that might be interesting and useful for inspection use cases for P&C insurers. So what we're doing is we're identifying where the structures are, where the vegetation is, and then where the structures are, we look for a variety of different things that are important about roof condition, quality. Like, we'll identify if it's a flat roof or a steep slope roof, what the material is, and so on. But the other thing it then does is looking for conditions of wear. As we progress, we even go back and look at past imagery and determine maybe the roof was replaced at some point in time. Are there solar panels? And then going like the pool on the property or the trampoline, the vegetation, to try to, especially in cases of wildfire. So those are the kinds of things that we were able to see through computer vision. And then we have a software platform around that allows for a combination of automated and manual workflows. So the automated workflows, customers can go in there and set up rules to say, hey, there's certain things I care about, so let me know anytime I see those, or the system sees that. And then maybe we can just like straight through process everything else. And then on the manual side, we have this really deep this browser that allows you to look at a property and not just the aerial imagery and computer vision detections around that, but all the other associated data like building permits and valuations and weather data, all in kind of one spot.
So it's a platform for analysis.
That's correct.
You also produce a score. Is that right? It's not just providing the data, but in some cases you kind of give a score.
Yeah, so a few different scores around the roof quality, around the risk of a future loss due to wind, hail, and then we also do that for wildfire. I think what we've always tried to do is take the insight and then kind of distill it down into answers and really allowing our customers to drive action off of it in a more streamlined, convenient way.
Okay, so you were saying that about 5 years ago, you guys made this major pivot. Is that fair to say it was a major pivot?
Yeah, it's funny. At the time we didn't want to call it a pivot because it was like, it was almost an admission to failure. Yeah. And then we started seeing some of our other like drone competitors go under, and we're like, wow, we really pivoted that. We pivoted hard. We're
Yeah, it's okay. You can call it a pivot then.
We call it. Then we celebrate the pivot, but
it was for a long time.
You can say Kespri. Go ahead and say Kespri.
Yeah, no, Kespri and Airware and a handful of others who had raised far more money than we had. And I think to an extent, like because we were lean, we estimate that we burnt about $5 million. Some of those companies raised over $100 million and went completely belly up. And so maybe it was because we were just really more sensitive and we just couldn't spend that much. We saw the writing on the wall and made the move and did it pretty hard. But it's funny with the pivot thing, you almost feel like it's an admission of failure, but we didn't care. We just wanted to survive. But once it felt like, man, that was completely validated, then, it's hindsight's 50-50. Or, sorry, hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight's 2020. I mean, it was one of those things you decided, we don't really care how we get the data, right? We don't care how we get the images. We just want to work with them.
That's a really great point, Lee. We came at it from like the problem first. We just didn't really care how we solved it so much, as long as it was. We knew we had to do it scalably. Like I think when you start out, it doesn't have to be completely scalable, and you can work your way into it. But we fell in love with the problem and not the solution, and so all of our identity was around knowing the problem space so well, and the folks that were experiencing those problems. And I say we, Dave was fortunate to bring me into that world, but I, learned a lot along the way and knew the right questions to ask with them. And, one of the interesting things when we were going out, when we first started Betterview, Dave was still running, it was called RSI, his family's inspection business. And our first customers were RSI customers. And he would go out and go on sales calls and bring me with him. So we talk about their RSI business, and we say, hey, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this Betterview thing that we just started up. And that's how we got our first customers. So in the process, which is really helpful, like it gave us a great, credibility, a jump start.
Sure.
But I'd come out of these meetings. I was like, hey, Dave, let's talk about for a second the first part of that meeting about RSI. It's like I said, everyone is just going after you guys on, price and time service. And I said, that's kind of, I don't know that you can really deliver both. And he's like, yeah, I know. That's kind of the problem here. So that was an interesting learning and saying, like, we really got to figure out a way to not just improve the cost on this by 10% or 20%, like with the drones in our world.
Yeah.
We needed to figure out like an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude improvement over the traditional inspection process.
And did you get there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I love what you just said when you said we fell in love with the problem, not the solution. What a simple but important lesson that is, right? For so many entrepreneurs. And you think about, some of the names that previous drone companies no longer in existence that we named. I think you could point to that no. We have the solution. We're the solution, right? They skipped over so many of the important parts. Like you're saying, Lee and I have been on the claims end for years, and mostly property. And if I can't count how many times I've been in conversations with insurance executives or even managers who are all the way up our everywhere on time and on cost, right? So it's 5 years ago. You make a pivot. I know that you probably didn't want to go to your investors and say, hey, guys, great news. We're making a pivot.
Yeah. It's a tough conversation. And Nationwide Insurance is our biggest investor, and we were actually engaging folks over there on the drone stuff. And we went to them and said, hey, look, I know this could be a challenge. And what's your advice? How do you guys feel about, of course, gave them the whole rundown of like the business and what we're seeing. And it was just immediate support. So the Nationwide Ventures folks, Brian Anderson, Eric Ross, and the rest of the team just didn't even miss a beat. They're like, hey, if you think this is the right move for your business, then we support you. And if there's fallout with the business, like we'll all handle it together. That's fine. And quite frankly, like we got a little bit of pushback, but everyone like was very supportive at the end of the day. But they were just instantly supportive, and that was kind of the most significant example of that. I mean, quite frankly, the investors, we've had great investors, and they've really kind of believed in us and said, "You guys figure it out. You're the experts," and I'm grateful for that. So they haven't micromanaged us in any way. And that is a pretty big change in decision, even in that case. So that was really helpful. And that allowed us to really focus on the customer side of it. And I think what we were looking at is seeing that we had stronger demand, but at the same time, we did have a lot of customers on the drone side. And we had the good fortune that the folks over at DroneBase, now ZiteView, they were servicing about, at that point, more than half of our drone flights, and we're a great partner. And they wanted this. They said, "Hey, well, can we buy the software from you and continue to service those customers?" And I said, "That'd be amazing." They're like, "Yeah, let's figure that out." And that's what we ended up doing. And in fact, even one of our employees transitioned over, who was responsible for the generation of the reports off of the imagery. And and that worked out incredibly well. And it's amazing. Like an example of one of the customers on that end was EMC Insurance, and EMC is one of our other they invested multiple rounds in us. They've been an incredibly strong supporter. They're a great customer today. And I think, we felt like it was the right thing to do. And it was great that everyone could have the right outcome. It aligned with what DroneBase ZiteView was trying to do, allowed our customers to have a nice soft landing. And, I think it took a little bit of effort, but it was well worth it. A small investment.
Mm-hmm. So you embark on the new road, you take the fork in the road. And that's been about 5 years, right?
That's
and then
right.
What starts to happen?
Well, we continue to build and build. And in fact, like in the very early days, we didn't have computer vision. We were dabbling, I'd say, more or less with computer vision technology. We knew we needed to build that, and it needed to be really strong, and it needed to outperform our human analysis. in the very early days, we were using offshore human analysis. So we were actually focused really on serving folks on their renewal book. So existing book in force, not new business, because they could wait for the data to come back. They could wait 24, 48 hours. And so, but that was kind of the intermediate step. The next step to that was, as we built better and better tech, and then we hit a point, I think it was like in the beginning of 2020, where we did a full cutover because it was pretty clear that our computer vision technology was outperforming our human workforce. And of course, then you also get the benefits of speed, right? Like the computer vision can work in a matter of seconds, and it's more cost effective. There's a lot of R&D that goes into it, but operationalizing it on a day-to-day basis, it's highly scalable. So then we just kind of went out and just kept, improving the product, which was a combination of the computer vision, but also adding more software features to help our customers with their workflow needs, and growing existing accounts and selling to new ones, rinse and repeat.
It seems to me that the space that you're in, which I call, and probably incorrectly, underwriting technology, technology-assisted underwriting products, something like that, has a fairly competitive space.
Yeah.
How is it that but I've watched you guys, because, Lee and I spend a lot of time in looking at the tech landscape in insurance. I've watched you guys continue to advance and grow and get bigger and more prominent, and your name. What did you do? Can you tell us what your secret sauce was that you think made you guys stand out over the competition? That's
a good question. I think it started with our DNA, and then how we continued to build the team. Both was either like an incredibly strong technologist or really new insurance, or both. But what was great, like as we built on, we had people who were very good at what they did on a variety of different fronts, but also I think at least half our team has significant P&C insurance experience. Then the other part of that is you have to stay focused. And so we always had the opportunity of going after other verticals. We explored some other ones like construction and real estate finance or real estate. There's government use cases. And I think there are opportunities there, but we just felt like don't scale prematurely. And I think now we're with Nearmap, they're working in multiple verticals at scale. They're like 10 times the size of us or so. We're kind of like, scaling up very quickly in effect, but there's certainly other use cases that were identified that we could work into, and I think that'll happen now. But it was important to us that we not try to do too much too early, and concentrate all of our resources and all of our focus into the market we knew so well, and also where there's just so much opportunity.
The impact that you can have on a company is super important and significant. And that's not to say that people that work in the claims end like ourselves can't also, but you guys help them make the decisions about, is this a risk that I should write or not? Right? I mean, ultimately, sure. And those mistakes around that are real dollars.
No, for sure. Like, by the way, like we do have folks have been using our platform for claims to kind of look back in history. And we also built a product to help speed recovery, so what we found, I think I touched on it a second ago, which was we have a lot of customers that are leveraging us, not just for new business, but also for their in-force book. So we realized, hey, we know where all the locations are. If a severe event does hit, let's understand which properties were potentially impacted, and when there's imagery post-event of those properties, we can analyze those and use our same technology to assess damage. But it was a nice add-on case to underwriting, and underwriting is clearly our core and where we started and where we have all of our traction today. I think we do think about like that whole insurance policy life cycle, and folks like. And some of the interesting comments we got is folks talking about how we're bringing claims and underwriting together in a way that they hadn't before, because claims folks want to understand how the property was underwritten, what was it like at the time, and the underwriting folks want to get better based on actual losses that resulted. So we've also we've used claims data, and we continue to explore ways to do this better and better. getting more and more data into the mix, but how do you understand like what losses actually occurred and what was the precondition of those properties, so that when you're you're writing new business or even looking at your existing book, which properties are most vulnerable? And that's a big focus area, the vulnerability piece of understanding which properties are more susceptible to loss, especially in cases where you can do something about it.
Right, like wildfire.
Yeah, predicting and preventing loss, and the predicting is one thing. Preventing, it leads into a whole nother set of actions that need to occur. But I think that prevention has to start with being able to compellingly predict what is leading to the loss. So you can say you need to educate the property owner. Insurance companies on their own are not going to prevent losses. They can predict them though and help their insureds understand the risks, so that they can actually avoid those situations. Because it's not good. Insurers obviously want to reduce their losses, but they the insureds don't want to have their homes burned down or have their businesses interrupted. That's bad. So it's bad for them as well.
Yeah.
So there's a real win-win out there, and this is my kind of my long way of answering. It did start with underwriting, but the reason why I've gotten more into claims is that there's this whole policy life cycle.
That's the whole
relationship
cycle.
That's so important that when you really want to get deep into the underwriting problem, you do need to bring claims into the loop.
Interesting. So 2021, 2022, the bottom kind of drops out of a lot of the tech world. Valuations change. Everything kind of goes crazy and haywire. And what used to be regular announcements that we would read about this company being sold or that company raising money slow down tremendously to a trickle. And then all of a sudden, we see this news story about Betterview. Big news. now part of the Nearmap family. We've had Nearmap on before.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Patrick Quigley. I don't know if he's still with the company.
Absolutely. No, we've known Patrick for many years. Yeah.
And wonderful guy. In fact, I'll go as far as saying a fan of our podcast. And he was really gracious. He was a great guest. And anyways.
Yeah, Patrick was a big driver of the Nearmap's expansion into North America. So,
right. Right.
So we've known him from very, the earliest days of our relationship. And so it's been interesting to kind of see them. We watched them grow. They were pretty small at the time and have really had a ton of success in growing the U.S.
So tell us about, you must have had lots of people knocking at the door saying, hey, we should explore this. So kind of tell us what you can about how this came about and why.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny, when exits were plentiful and multiples were high. We felt like we were just too early as a business. Like we really hadn't found our, gotten our sea legs or, really developed into like a sustainable long-term business. I think when you start developing into a sustainable long-term business is when you're at or nearing profitability. It was kind of the first time in our, this in 2023 was the first time where I looked at it and said, oh my gosh, like we're default alive. Like we're on the path, we're reaching about, profitability. And in fact, like we were just,
you can say months, it. You can say it, David. You can say it. It's great to watch you struggle. These technology people, they don't get to say that very often. They're not sure how to say it. Or if it's
I know. It's like, we're all uncomfortable with that. But it's interesting, because you can't get to you can get to profitable at a very low revenue number, but you probably can't grow very fast and develop a very interesting business. But we were kind of getting to this place where we were large enough but while still being able to just really drive and invest heavily in R&D, but also have a really healthy business. And so anyway, it was like, look, in the past, I've raised money multiple times over in the company's 9-year history. And it was always, we had to raise the money or you died. And there were times when we got really close and, dangerously close. But this 2023, it was finally we turned the corner. And I think that was exciting and it put us in a good place on that front. But also you got to kind of think about what's next. Like, what do you do? And why are we doing this in the first place? And,
right.
the reason we're here, I touched on it, like predict and prevent losses. How do we actually improve outcomes and become a ubiquitous in P&C insurance and hopefully beyond one day? I think we felt like we could drive a lot of impact. There's the situation where losses are growing faster than premiums can reasonably grow, and so unfortunately, individuals and businesses are actually seeing kind of diminishing coverage of their properties. There's the premiums are going up, but also the deductibles are going up, and more things are getting excluded, and it's because the business model is kind of breaking a bit. So we felt like, to really have that impact, it'd be best to pair up with somebody who also is focused on that, combine our joint resources. But here's the other thing, like we're imagery dependent, and we've worked with every imagery company that has any kind of scale in the US. There are a lot of, great folks out there and good imagery, but Nearmaps is the best. They have the best coverage for this underwriting use case between, the quality, the frequency of capture and the overall coverage area. It is clearly the best combo, and they're also growing and be able to they're making improvements all the time. So Betterview runs best on Nearmap. It's like Mercedes runs best on Mobile One. And so it's like you can put other stuff in there, but it's a clear, like the alignment's clear. Like, so the combo is incredibly powerful. So look, if we want to keep doing more of what we're doing, it's nice that we also generate a healthy outcome for all of our investors. But ultimately, the decision was just like this is the way to really drive maximal impact in this market.
So what does the future look like with this? Is it going to be easier for you to do what you do today with this partnership, with this being acquired by them? Is that what it's all about? I mean, your press release talked about how they had kind of 4 parts: deeper analytics, more efficiency, things like that. Mm-hmm. What does the future look like being with Nearmap?
Yeah, I think so. A few things. One of them is, I talked about imagery. This guarantees that anyone who's using Betterview, I'm thinking from that angle first, but like anyone who's using Betterview is going to be using the imagery that can provide the best experience in Betterview. So that's guaranteed, and that's permanent, right? Because we're all one and the same now, because this is a complete combination. The other thing is just the certainty that it creates. If somebody, a lot of people companies, I should say, are integrating Betterview into their workflow and really depending on it. And so being able to have certainty that we're going to be able to continue to provide our service because we have that key input component of aerial imagery and the best stuff that's out there, that's helpful. Like, we got folks that spend a lot of money and time and effort on integrating us into their workflow. And also a lot of customers that are considering doing that, but to give them this level of certainty that it's going to be around permanently, that's really helpful. And then if you think about, just for both companies' perspective, I think about this Venn diagram of capabilities. There's aerial imagery, there's computer vision of the imagery, and then there's the software workflow kind of, how do you make all this data useful part. Nearmap exclusively had the aerial imagery. Betterview basically exclusively had the software platform. They do have a map browser, but it's kind of more generalized. But it's in terms of this really deep P&C view of a property. And we both had computer vision. So we were able to bring all this combo together. On the computer vision side, the stuff that's overlapping, like we had different things we were doing. And so we're bringing all that expertise together and basically like able to combine our R&D resources to get even better output on the computer vision and more accurate and more and telling you more things.
That's great. I do want to ask, so Rob was talking earlier about how there's a lot of players in this space, and this is kind of, in my mind, I'm sure there are more, but I'm thinking about 3 different acquisitions where we're consolidating. And we had Hazard Hub being acquired by Guidewire. LexisNexis took FlyReal. You're going with Nearmap. Do we think that we're going to continue in the industry to see a consolidation of data companies into others? What is your thought there?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's can't predict what everyone else is going to do, but it does seem to be that there's an ongoing trend here. And look, I mean, like, and you've got Verisk and CoreLogic also have been making acquisitions for years as well, right?
Oh, they've been making, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So no, I think there's going to be more consolidation. It'll be interesting to see where folks decide to play and where they partner. I mean, it's a really interesting dynamic of who, where you choose to partner versus, have your own capabilities.
So what does the future hold for you guys? I mean, some of it, of course, is unknown and will develop with time. But can you share with us anything that's on the short-term roadmap about what this opportunity is going to help you pursue or go after, or that you want to tell the industry that you're going to be knocking on their door and telling them?
Yeah, no, I think step one right now is bring together the capabilities of both Nearmap and Betterview, and both companies have been on a tear on the R&D front in terms of the stuff we've been developing. Nearmap, they have a new camera system they're working to get out to market. I should say but I'll keep it as they for now so that we talk about the distinction of the two. But it starts like the camera systems are a big part of it, and then how they're processing that imagery, and both like for visual and non-visual renderings of the imagery. And then on the computer vision side, I was talking, both companies have been investing very heavily. And so bringing together all of the we have different things. We have some overlap, but we also have a lot of difference. And then so having all that come together. And for us, one of the things we were already working on, but this accelerates it, is having everything pre-processed. And so it allows us to do more interesting things and also address like homeowners quoting for straight through processing, that if you don't pre-process, it's arguably too slow, especially for comparative raters. So those are a few of the opportunities. Another thing is that, we're touching on, Nearmap has also been in the claims market with their impact response imagery. And so Nearmap's impact response imagery has been helping a lot of customers. We have software that's able to leverage the imagery to especially when we have all the properties already loaded up in our system for monitoring on the underwriting side. And so that comes together really nicely. As we kind of continue to progress, we hear more and more stuff about folks wanting to understand more things about the surrounding area, which we touch on, but we don't do a lot on it yet. So I think there's just a variety of areas where we can get more and more depth of information that's useful to P&C insurance and beyond, quite frankly, that now has, things that were on our roadmap, that were on Nearmap's roadmap, that we can accelerate deliver to the market.
I want to ask you before we go today about AI, which of course is, maybe the big thing of 2023, 2022, 2023. There's no shortage of news and information about AI. Is computer vision a synonym for AI or a function of AI?
Yeah, it's like a subset of AI, right? So there's certainly computer vision. You've got large language models. There's natural language processing. I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff. But, these are all different categories of AI. We're also using, machine learning to build these risk models, right, to understand. So the short answer on that is we have all these things that we're able to determine in images. We have loss data. So when you look at the loss data, you say, what were the things that showed up that were found in the imagery prior to the loss? There's high correlation to loss. So anyway, the technology makes it easier to possible to do some of these things that weren't possible before. But I guess the thing that it's obviously getting the biggest, the most attention these days is LLM with like ChatGPT and the like. And so we incorporated it into the Betterview interface. So when somebody's in there, we've done a lot of work around creating a rich interface around the data, great interactions. Something pretty easy for us to do is just prompt ChatGPT with a bunch of that information and then let people ask questions of it. So that's kind of like that was something we were able to incorporate in a few weeks. And we put that in there, did it kind of in beta for select folks that wanted to test it out. And we've seen a lot of interest around that. I think what gets more interesting is how do we start thinking about solving some, as we keep developing the product, instead of having to build very specific capabilities around certain information problems? How do we let the LLM kind of tease this out and kind of highlight things that we might not actually even be explicitly looking for? But I think the next step to that, the thing where I'd like to see things go, is how can LLMs help us around this predict and prevent, especially the prevent side? The biggest challenge, when we talk to insurance carriers about predict and prevent, they are completely on board, understand that that's something that needs to happen. The prevent side is really hard though. So the reason it's hard, because you start providing context and say, hey, here's a problem. What happens next?
Who's it up to do something about it?
Yeah.
Right.
No, right. And so it's mostly up to the insured in a lot of cases, but so there's that whole other thing, like maybe we have this claim we didn't know about. But I think the bigger thing is they're afraid they're going to get inundated. And I don't think their fear is unfounded, that they're going to get inundated with questions and maybe a negative response to saying, hey, your roof's in bad shape, it's about to fail. Right? It's like, well, don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah,
this is just
your house
this is
sucks.
reality. This is what we know. And so it's really important how you actually convey that message. But then the second thing is you do need to then be responsive. Like if you're going to throw that out there, you've got to help and if it is on the insured to solve their problem and it's going to lead to a better outcome, that's wonderful. However, they need help in most cases. And so I think one of the areas that I think the LLMs could be very helpful is in providing that, like providing more context, to help the insured understand the problem, the impact of the potential impact of the problem, and then how they can go about resolving it. And so where manpowering that could be infeasible for a carrier, an LLM could step in if it's designed properly and it can properly perform and it can take the lead on that.
So interesting that the use cases for it are just expanding exponentially. People are finding use cases like I would have never guessed that you guys have already used it and integrated it into your platform is just an example of how wide-ranging, how huge this is, and also very exciting. So to finish the story that we started with, a couple of guys talking about drones and roofs. Maybe a week in the Bahamas, maybe a week on a private island in Caribbean. You have like 74 children, don't you? Something like that, don't you?
Only four for now. Only
four. You have a bunch of kids, okay? Which means that you have a wife who's pulling her hair out, right? And you're pulling your hair out. So the old question, you just won the Super Bowl. Now what are you going to do? So now what are you going to do? You're going to have a little party? You're going to go away? You're going to have a little vacation? You can take a few days off?
No, my wife does an amazing job. She works too. And we've got some great support. And then you just go into it and they I don't know, they keep things interesting. The kids do. There's a lot of activities. I don't remember this many activities growing up, and I think it's only going to get worse because we have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So the 1-year-old doesn't even really have activities, but I don't know. We'll figure it out. But it's one reason why I moved to Houston earlier this year, to go back home to get our parents and my sister and to be able to help out because they've been lovely. But now look, the post-event celebration, I'm doing what I was planning to do in the first place, which is take the family skiing. We love going to Utah. I mean, 4 small children and taking them skiing, the amount of gear.
Crazy. That's insane. It's not possible.
But I will say, it allows you to really pull away from work because you can't take a conference call while you're trying to get a mountain.
Right.
So, in fairness, we can drop 2 of them off at daycare and then we get the other 2 out. So, but it's just a great way for us to spend time as a family. And we've been doing it for years, but it allows us just to unplug and face some interesting challenges, have fun, and everyone's exhausted at the end of the day. And then you just repeat it the next day and the next day.
That's wonderful.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. We just had Jim Loveland on yesterday, who lives in Utah.
Oh, yeah.
And we were talking about skiing. So yeah, go skiing. That's a great idea. I can't imagine it. Talk about herding cats. 4 kids on skis or snowboards. Sounds crazy.
Well, the third one, I got the first 2 are excellent skiers now. They've both spent well over 100 days lifetime on the mountain, and so they
know what they're doing.
They're fun. Yeah. And so now look, think about, it's a big investment on my wife's and my part. And now I only have to do it with two more. I feel like I'm starting back from the beginning. It's almost
hand-me-downs.
But at least I know it. Yeah, it's true. That's hilarious. We got bins and bins of clothes.
That's so great.
Well, listen, we're thrilled for you and Dave and the whole team.
Thank you.
And wish you guys great success going forward, and wanted to have you on to talk about it and to tell the story. And it's a great story. It's a success story. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
No, I'm honored to be here and on the show and to have been able to lead Betterview over these last 9 years with Dave. It's been a really fun journey. We've been supported by some amazing people, and it's bittersweet that part of it's over. But the thing that I'm so excited about is that Nearmap just allows us, teaming up with them allows us to keep doing more of the same and basically just grow our family. So we've already been interacting with the folks over there every day a bunch, and it's going incredibly well.
Well, come back in a year or two and tell us some more.
We'll do.
And we'll see you out on the circuit.
See you soon.
All right. Sounds good, guys.
I love a good story.
A good story is where it all starts.
I love a pivot.
I enjoy a good founder story with a nice pivot in between.
With a pivot on top.
And most of them have a pivot. A pivot. And it's not a sign. It's not a admission of failure. A pivot is just a part of a story that gets us to where we are today.
Right.
Yeah.
Great story, great outcome, great success. Thrilled for them. Yes. And for the industry. They're doing great. They're killing it. Let's face it. And you heard what he said. I mean, profitability in the insurtech world is not something that you hear a lot about.
Yeah. No, it's a great conversation.
Especially in a short time. So we thank both Davids and we congratulate both of them. And thanks, David, for being with us today, and for you too. And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
And until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.